Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Calley, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Thank you for joining us today. I want to say welcome to one of our new members, Marcus Construction, located in Hudsonville. We're welcoming them on behalf of our sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. You can learn more about Consumers Credit Union at consumerscu.org. All right, so there is a potential for legal challenges on the income tax rollback that was triggered earlier this year. Brian, what can you tell us about what's happening there?
There's a lot of discussions, a lot of back and forth right now on just investigating what the potential options are for challenging the opinion by the Attorney General that the Department of Treasury in the state has indicated an acceptance of and a determination or decision to follow, which says that while the income tax rate was decreased this year, that they will automatically increase it next year. No changes in law, no votes, no, just administratively, they're going to increase it back up 0.2%. So it went from 4.25 down to 4.05, and they'll be increasing it back to 4.25 next year. And this, you might recall, was the subject of a pretty big confrontation earlier in the year where it was clear that because revenues into state government went up so much in the last year, so much higher than inflation, that it triggered a rollback, a decrease in the rate. And there were efforts that they tried to pass through the legislature to cancel that decrease in the interest rate that was already built into the law. They tried some changes in the way they did accounting to make it so that it kind of de-triggered it, so to prevent it from going down in the first place. All of those efforts failed, and so as they weren't able to get it through the legislature with immediate effect, that it looked like, okay, the rate will go down. Small businesses, this is the main tax that small businesses pay in their income. Then came the Attorney General, who just said, you know what, we're going to interpret the laws to say that this decrease is only for a single year. And in order to do that, no joke, they said the word current rate actually means previous rate. And it doesn't make any sense, although I don't think they really tried all that hard to make it sound credible. They just decided they weren't going to let the rate stay down. They couldn't stop it from going down, but then they're essentially changing the law without a vote. Naturally, this is the sort of thing that is ripe for challenge. The question is when, who would be the right plaintiff or plaintiffs for a challenge like this, and when would be the right time to challenge it? Would it be next year when they increase the rate back up? Can it be challenged based on the opinion? So somebody versus the state of Michigan is something that kind of expect. The reason that we bring it up on today's briefing is because last week, in a discussion with the media, the Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, who is, by the way, a former SBAM Legislator of the Year, has indicated an interest in pursuing some sort of legal action to challenge this decision to increase the rate without any process or vote next year. And so it's definitely on our radar screen. This is something that this is the main rate. It's the income tax rate is the main rate that any pass-through company, an S corporation, LLC, sole proprietor, partnership, or individual taxpayer pays. This is that main income tax rate. And so it's one that, of course, we have a very keen interest in. And of course, and we're also very pleased to see the discussion around challenging this Attorney General opinion. We think that it's very vulnerable to challenge and ripe for a challenge, if you will. So we're happy to see that it hit the radar screen, and something you probably should expect to hear a lot more from us about over the course of the next year.
All right, let's talk about an issue that's made its way through the legislature. And this is applicable for all of us, but really why we're talking about it is if you have employees that drive for your business, soon using your phone while driving will become illegal.
Yeah, this is, I think we're going to need to get a little more clarification on what exact things using your phone for while driving will become illegal. The legislation says sending or receiving electronic messages or messages on an electronic device becomes illegal. And I've heard it described as, when you're receiving it, if you're holding it in your hand, holding your phone in your hand. But again, we'll have to, as implementation and clarification and law enforcement entities take this law and put it into practice, we'll do some follow-up on it. But it goes into effect on June 30th. So this is a pretty quick. One thing that I know for sure that that texting, like typing things into a phone would be would certainly be illegal starting on that date. Now, technically, texting while driving is already illegal, but what this does is it makes it a primary offense. It means that you can be pulled over because a police officer saw you with a phone in your hand, as opposed to right now when it's called a secondary offense. So if you were doing something, maybe you're speeding, maybe you didn't use your blinker, or maybe you had a rolling stop, and you were texting, then it's a secondary offense. They can't pull you over solely because of the use of your phone. And but after this legislation is signed by the governor, which there's every indication that it will be, starting June 30th of 2023, so right around the corner here, this is a fairly big change. It's one that I think you can expect that there would be pretty aggressive education and enforcement around over the next few months.
All right, let's talk about independent contractors, a topic we have covered multiple times on the briefing, but there really are kind of two battlefronts right now, both federally and here in Michigan. So can you walk us through the issues and let us know what can we expect to happen in the near future?
Yeah, we've been talking lately about the legislation that was introduced in the Michigan House of Representatives, which really clamps down or limits independent contractors and their ability to exist, to do business, essentially snuffing out all of those small businesses. And it occurred to me as I was listening to an interview on a federal congressional hearing on the subject, and listening to a member of Congress that chairs a committee that's looking closely at some proposed Department of Labor rules. It occurred to me that we hadn't really talked about that part of the threat in a while. So this is a two-pronged threat. We have the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor in Washington, D.C., who has proposed rules, administrative rules, that would implement much more severely restrictive rules on who can qualify as an independent contractor and who has to be classified as an employee of a business. And so that happened. We had a lot of great comments from our members. We believe over 1,000 comments came in from SBAM members to the Department of Labor, in addition to us opposing those rules. And so now they take those public comments, they're supposed to consider them and then make either a final determination or propose changed rules or amended rules. So we're still waiting for the conclusion to that process, while we are concerned and pushing back on efforts here at the state to do the same thing. Now, what are they trying to do both at the state and the federal level? And this is all based on an initiative that first passed in California that they have since repealed major aspects of because it was a disaster there. But this effort would there's two things that essentially what's proposed in Michigan and what the Federal Department of Labor is looking to do, and that make it particularly challenging or threatening to small businesses, and that is that you can't operate as an independent contractor performing a function that is part of the usual course of business of your customer. And if you do, then you have to be hired on as an employee. You can't operate as an independent contractor. Can't be your own boss. You have to be an employee of the business. And that's kind of bizarre if you think about it. Like, why would a company hire somebody for something that is not in the usual course of their business? It essentially eliminates or outlaws most independent contractors, say for something like, if the door hinges were bent or something and you needed a contractor to come in and fix that. Well, it's not the usual course of your business, but so many other things are part of the usual course of your business that would normally be contenders for having independent contractors. It is not unusual for small businesses to operate as independent contractors or to use independent contractors. And that is our concern, is that it stifles or it snuffs out both the federal and the state rules, snuffs out new business starts. Most new business starts in the last few years have been independent contractors, something that the politicians celebrate, they brag about, and then yet I don't think they understand that their own proposed legislation would snuff them out, but then also hurts small businesses that small businesses don't just grow in full-time increments. And the idea of being able to hire independent contractors, get fractional employees is something that is, it allows that person who's operating as an independent contractor to, number one, be their own boss, set their own schedule, decide what hours they want to work, and if they want to give more or less time to that employer, it just puts them in the driver's seat. They are the boss. This idea of fractional services is something that allows businesses that are at that stage where, they're kind of on the borderline. Do I need to have a full-time information technology person? Do I need to have a full-time webmaster? Do I need to have a full-time chief financial officer, CFO on staff? A lot of businesses are at a point where they can't really justify that, but they could buy 20% of somebody's time, so they can get that consultation, get that help, get that service. And all of those things are part of the usual course of any business. And so we're really quite concerned. We've actually told a lot of the policymakers that we've pushed this up as this is a top concern, one that stops new businesses from forming and stops existing small businesses from growing. And it's our hope that this current kind of pause that they've taken. So this particular legislation, we do not expect that it's going to move before the legislature is done for the summer, but it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. They'll be back in the fall, and our job will be to make sure that through both our members and the work that we do here at SBAM, that they don't move any restrictive rules through the state that would harm small businesses. And of course, we're anxiously awaiting the publication of the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor's amended rules, and hope that they take to heart the thousands and thousands of public comments that they received from all across the country from small businesses that are operating as independent contractors and are just asking for the government to not put them out of business.
All right, let's take a look at today's Data Monday report.
There's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to Data Monday. So let's take a look at, we're going to start with some survey data, and this first one from it's Gallup, but for Charles Schwab and Bloomberg, it shows both in orange the unemployment rate and in blue the confidence or lack thereof in the Federal Reserve. And so this is a I show it because it's back to back with the NFIB national surveys that I'm about to show you. There's not really much confidence. This blue line, you have to look at this ledger. So these are the people that have confidence in the Federal Reserve to do the right thing for the U.S. economy. That has fallen down to about 35%. That's pretty low, even with unemployment being so low. So that, you've seen in the past when unemployment is high, confidence in the Federal Reserve is low. But here we have unemployment is low, and so is confidence. That just kind of stuck out to me. Now let's move over and take a look at the NFIB surveys. These are national surveys, but looking at both prices and price plans. So in blue, you'll see those that are charging higher prices, and then in orange, those who are planning to have higher prices in the coming 3 months. You see both of those coming down as inflation is coming down. It's natural that we would see that that these price plans in the future would be coming down too. Looking at the compensation plans for small businesses, we see that actually kind of coming down as well. So if you were to look at the point over point rate in orange here, you'll see that this is like the size of the increase from a year earlier is way down, but that's because last year it was way up. So you'll see that it's just kind of moderating, if you will. The expected credit conditions, that is also way down, and that's, I guess, kind of self-explanatory, or would be kind of obvious with high interest rates. And then in terms of, oh, actually, looks like I've got just another, it's another type of display, just pulling out the higher prices and then comparing that higher prices to a year ago. So job openings is what I'm trying to get to here. The job openings hard to fill and the hiring plans, you see both of those kind of rolling over, not plummeting down, but again, the jobs hard to fill still very historically at a very high point, and the hiring plans, they're trailing off, but again, not at a level where it looks like a recession. But the question is, how low does it go? Now let's take a look at inflation. We talked a little bit about inflation on Thursday. I promised to have the graphs for some support and visuals this week. And you'll see in blue, the headline inflation is now 4.9. So it's under 5%. That's pretty significant. It's been a while since it's been there. And then we have the inflation, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, except for food and energy, and you'll see that that's at 5.5%. So now we've got a few months in a row where that more core inflation is higher than the overall inflation. And we'll take a look at a few of the components that are causing that to happen. But looking at again, this data here is the same as the last, but it shows it month by month, the increase month by month. Both went up the same amount month over month, so up 0.4%. And if you were to look at this core inflation here, which is the orange, as I've been saying for a few months now, it's very modest, but the trend line you can talk yourself into, that's a declining trend line. And so there's reason to believe that it's going slower. The getting inflation tamed is going slower than anybody wants, but it is really starting to happen. Looking at the CPI, there's a lot of ways of looking at inflation, so we're going to look at several of them today. So looking at the average of utility costs, gasoline, food at home, and electricity. So these are like main commodities. These move up and down pretty quickly, and you'll see that those have come down quite a bit. So you'll see them at about zero. So as compared to a year ago, about the same. And this really does indicate that in looking at other areas where we've seen deflation. So we see inflation pretty much under control with those main commodities as compared to a year ago. Doesn't mean that prices went down, it means that they stopped going up, okay? The looking at used cars and trucks, like prices actually have gone down in this market. So you have literal deflation, and but one that has gone up, the owner's equivalent of rent of residence. So naturally, there's still very restricted supply in homes, and then of course interest rates are so much higher than they were just a little while ago. Looking at the CPI core services except for housing. So I just showed you housing. Housing is expensive, but if you look at the CPI for core services, but not including housing, you'll see actually pretty good news here. It looks like it is solidly rolling over now and starting to come down. If we look at in the blue here, we have the consumer commodities, and then in orange we have consumer services. Same type of thing. You see the commodities coming down 2%, right about where you'd want to see that, and with the services, you see that rolling over a little bit. You just have to look closely, squint your eyes, and you'll see that it actually did kind of roll over a little bit. So while 6.8% is not good, it is. I think there's a lot of building evidence that that inflation is finally, these sticky and stubborn parts of the CPI are starting to turn a bit. This is another way of looking at it too. The Atlanta Fed, they put out their sticky and their flexible inflation, and so the flexible, the fast moving parts, things like commodities, that right about where you'd want it. They're targeted at 2%, and the sticky, all the other stuff that doesn't move so quickly, again, not a lot, but just shows just a little bit of a rolling over. You see, it's not going up anymore, and maybe has started to come down just a bit. So all of that is good news. That while the recessionary risks certainly have not gone away, the inflationary risks look a lot less than what they did even, like, say 3 months ago. And well, what month is this? 4 months. I mean, back in January, when we looked in February and looked at the January numbers, it really was one of these, like, whoa, these they might have to do a lot more to get inflation under control. And but since then, all the normal things that you would expect to happen as interest rates have been increased are taking effect. And then you put on top of that banks tightening up their credit rules and credit access because of liquidity issues and a handful of bank failures. All of those things together, I think, are conspiring to keep to force this hardest, stickiest part of inflation to finally start to give in a bit.
All right. So next week, Brian, we have our PAC fundraiser, our Small Biz PAC fundraiser. It's on Wednesday, May 24th. Do you want to share a little bit about the PAC and tell people why they should come?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's this is our biggest annual fundraiser for a political action committee. And yes, we do get, while we are bipartisan, that doesn't mean nonpartisan. We work in the political system. We do identify pro small business candidates. We vet them and their positions, but also for those that are in office, we look at their voting records, and when elections come around, we make recommendations. And we strongly support those who support small business. And that's only made possible by support from our members who get involved and support our political action committees. So that's coming up next week on May 24th. It's right in the Lansing area at the Hope Sports Complex. We'll share a link in the notes, if they're in the comments there. If you'd like to come, please do. It's a great group. Those that are really involved in our political activities. It's just a fun group to hang out with anyway. And if you want to get involved, but that just kind of, if direct involvement might put your business in the crosshairs, let SBAM be your shield. You can get involved through and with us. We'll take the arrows, and you can just be a part of the family that supports the work that we do. And the work that we do is always important, but it just seems like there's so many heightened risks right now. Some of the proposals out there are exceptionally bad, and therefore it means that the work that we have to do to make sure we maintain a pro small business environment here in Michigan is more important and frankly more difficult than ever. So we'd love to see a part of it. Many hands make light work.
All right. Yes, definitely hope to see you on the 24th. And this week, we do have 2 webinar opportunities. We have a webinar tomorrow on our pooled employer retirement plan. And then we have a panel discussion Wednesday on cyber risk management. So sbam.org/events will take you to learn more about both of those great webinar opportunities. Even if you can't attend live, if you register for them, we'll make sure you get the recording after it's done. So thank you for joining us today and for tuning in. We'll be back here Thursday. Have a great week.
See you on Thursday, everybody.